The recently concluded Anti-Bullying Week, with the theme One Kind Word, is focused on changing the narrative within schools. Joining us for our social newscast is Joané Geldenhuys from Community Keepers, talking to us about the projects that this organization runs at schools and how their anti-bullying project at school is working out. I think maybe the first thing we need to talk about is the idea of anti-bullying. I know that a lot of schools have created programs, a lot of schools are invested in creating a culture of anti-bullying. But now, with the way technology has invaded our space, is bullying still the same?
Yes, I think at school, yes, bullying. I mean, there's the physical bullying, verbal bullying, social bullying, but obviously also now cyberbullying. So that's also something that is very relevant in schools. And I think the scary thing about also cyberbullying is it's not, you can never really leave because children, they do have their phones with them, they are on social media. So I just think nowadays it's not just bullying at schools, but even if you are in your safe space at home in your room, you can still be cyberbullied. So I think it is quite a difficult thing, and it's something that children sometimes struggle to escape.
The concept of the word anti-bullying means that there's this kind of consciousness. We are all widely tuned into the idea that the culture, the environment that we can create for children can be very stressful, and that can be created by other
Mm,
children. But I do find that while we are obsessed with anti-bullying, we might be allowing the concepts that doesn't feel like bullying to slip through. So for example, if a child is being made fun of, maybe not on a regular basis, but on an occasional basis, or there is some kind of negative interaction, that we don't think of that as bullying, but we think of bullying as a persistent, long-term, progressively worse physical
yeah.
action. So is that a fair thing to say?
Yes, no, I mean, I think what I also try at the school where I work, and I also encourage my educators and everyone working here, that bullying is not necessarily a thing, like you said, that it needs to be persistent. I mean, bullying can also be a once-off thing, like teasing a child. I think what I usually just try when I talk to the learners and the educators is just that it is something that is on purpose. So, whenever they see that a child is being mean on purpose, or and I mean, it's sometimes when you think about bullying, we always think like physical bullying, like hitting or kicking or things like that, but it's also teasing, or just excluding someone. So yeah, I think that it's not necessarily something that it needs to be persistent. It can be a once-off thing as well, and that when we see a child is or someone is being on mean on purpose, immediately go and say, like, okay, so what's happening here? That is not okay to be mean on purpose or whatever, but to intervene and not just leave it.
I know that bullying happens in all spaces. It happens with adults, it happens in the workplace, but specifically because of the work that community keepers do at a school level. When I grew up, and I'm quite of a mature age, but when I grew up, I heard that things like toughening up somebody, when you say something to somebody, it's not always bullying, but it can come from a place of love. It can also be
Yeah.
in their best interest. How do we draw the line? Because it feels to me like that line is blurred at the moment, because people will say, well, I'm doing it in his best interest or her best interest. But could it be bullying? And also, as a follow-up to that, can teachers bully by their comments?
Yes, no, definitely. I do think that the whole thing of tough love and things like that. I mean, that is something that we are really trying to move away from. Um, and also to work with the educators, like what we did now as well. And I talk to my educators quite regularly about it. Is that, and I think it also fits nicely with the anti-bullying week theme. To the whole one word of kindness. Um, so I try to also, for my educators, what we did now as well a while back was to say that not to try to always catch someone doing something wrong, but rather to catch them doing something right, and then immediately to express that and to say, well done, I see that you're trying, or I see that you are being a good friend. And then also through that, setting an example for the children seeing us, looking up to us as role models in the school setting, and seeing that, okay, we as adults, we are the ones that are encouraging and that we are supporting and that we are being kind to each other, and not just like actions or so on, but to actually immediately express it and to notice it and to give that person recognition when we see it. So we really try to create a culture at the school of kindness and support, and inclusion, and to set that examples as adults, for the children then to follow.
Obviously, you're trained, and I would assume that with the Community Keepers Project, that the network is so well developed that you're able to rely on each other. But the skeptic in me wants to ask this question. Bullying is a symptom of something larger than the child acting out. Bullying can be from another parent, can be an environment. How do you fix a bully if the environment is still the same?
Yeah, that can be quite difficult and tricky, and I think that's why it's also very important that when we work with our learners, we should always try to work holistically, not just with the child, but also to try to get the family involved, the teachers, as many people as possible, or maybe just one person, significant person in that child's life, to get them involved. Because otherwise change will be difficult. So if it's more just an individual approach just with a child, then it is difficult. But to try and get as many people involved as possible, even if the child maybe just has one significant person in his life that you can also work with, to try and bring that change, then that would also be a beginning. So just to see, where can you find someone that means something, even if it's the teacher, and then for you and the teacher and the child to work together to try and bring about that change.
This is completely anecdotal, but I am a parent of a child who goes to a primary school. I've got a couple of children and they're at school. And I know anecdotally that the school that my child is at, they work incredibly hard to foster a sense of camaraderie amongst the kids. Schools seem to be very active, not to mention the SGBs at the school, and anti-bullying seems to be a big no. Am I correct in my assessment, or is that just the school that my children's at? Do you see that bullying has decreased at school, or is it still worrying?
No, I think bullying is definitely still worrying. It's still something that needs a lot of work, something that still needs a lot of attention. And I think that's why it's so important that there is something like an anti-bullying week, just that awareness, and to try our best to spread it not only with the children, but with parents, educators, therapists, children, everyone in a school system, to try people to see that children are being bullied, and that it's okay for children sometimes to be different, and to just focus a little bit more on inclusion, because that's definitely, bullying is still very relevant. Even though it's something that has been in schools for so long, it's still something that needs to be addressed and that we are still working on. Something that's very far from actually not happening. It's still very relevant in schools.
Final question from me. Everybody talks about technology and the role that technology can play and all of that kind of stuff. What would be a perfect mixture for you as a specialist in this area? A combination of parents, community, technology. What would that equation look like in order to eradicate all bullying?
I can just talk from like what we are doing at the moment, because that's something, especially now with COVID, we had to go into technology as well, to try and reach our clients and learners and educators and parents. So what we are doing from our side at the moment is that, yes, we are working with the learners and with the educators at school, but also we are sending out infographics. So that's just little information, almost like a JPEG that we send out, with a little bit of information. So with Anti-Bullying Week, we send out infographics, skills, where maybe they can act out being in different scenarios or situations, and then have a discussion about that. So we try to make use of social media as well, and on WhatsApp, sending out information to parents. Also, when we are doing groups and so on, we make use of little short videos that children can also look at and just also receive information in that way. So we try to make sure that it's not, if parents can't maybe come into a school, that they still receive the necessary information through WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook.